A grade school teacher is asking students what their fathers do for a living.
Timmy, you be first,
she says.
What does your father do for a living?
My father is a doctor,
Timmy replies proudly.
Very impressive,
says the teacher. Next, Amy raises her hand.
Amy, what about you?
She asks.
My father is a mailman,
replies Amy.
Wonderful,
replies the teacher. Little Johnny is waving his hand in the back of the class. The teacher tries to ignore him by looking around the room and asking,
Does anyone else want to share?
Little Johnny is still the only child with their hand up. The teacher sighs.
Okay, Johnny, what does your father do for a living?
He plays piano at a whorehouse,
says little Johnny, as though it was the greatest job in the world. The teacher is shocked and immediately changes the subject to history. After school, the teacher visits little Johnny's house. When his father answers the door, the teacher explains what Johnny said in class and demands an explanation. Little Johnny's father says, "Well, I'm actually a lawyer." But how am I going to explain that to an 8-year-old? 2 doctors are treating a man with lung disease. They explain how his smoking marijuana has led to his condition worsening.
But it's just herbal,
the patient protests.
How can it be bad for you?
One of the doctors sighs. Nature isn't all that innocent. Apple seeds contain lethal amounts of cyanide. In fact, there is a certain plant in my garden that will kill you if you sit under it for just 5 minutes. Just because it's natural doesn't mean it's safe. The man seems to accept the doctor's explanation and promises to stop smoking marijuana. After the patient leaves, the doctors go to lunch. As they're sitting down to eat, the second doctor asks,
Oh, by the way, what is that plant that you have in your garden that kills you if you sit under it?
The other doctor replies, Oh, a water lily. 3 bulls heard the rancher was bringing in another bull onto the ranch. The first bull says,
I've been here 5 years. I'm not giving this new bull any of my 100 cows.
The second bull added,
I've been here 3 years and I've earned my right to 50 cows. I'm keeping all my cows.
The third bull replied, I've only been here a year and so far you guys have only let me have 10 cows. I may not be as big as you fellows, but I'm keeping all 10 of my cows. Just then an 18-wheeler pulls up in the pasture carrying the biggest bull they've ever seen. At 4,700 pounds, each step he takes strains the steel ramp. The first bull says,
I think I could spare a few cows for our new friend.
The second bull says,
I actually have too many cows to take care of. I can spare a few.
They look over at the third bull and find him pawing the dirt, shaking his horns and snorting. The third bull looks up and says, Hell, he can have all my cows. I'm just making sure he knows I'm a bull. A police officer comes upon a terrible accident. It appears there are no survivors. As he looks upon the wreckage, a little monkey comes out of the brush and hops around the wreckage. The officer looks down at the monkey and says,
I wish you could talk.
The monkey looks back up at the officer and nods his head up and down.
You can understand what I'm saying?
Asks the officer. Again, the monkey nods his head up and down.
Well, did you see this?
He asks. The monkey nods his head up and down.
What happened?
Asks the officer. The monkey pretends to have a can in his hand and turns it up to his mouth.
Oh, they were drinking,
asks the officer.
What else?
The monkey taps his fingers on his palm.
They were texting?
Asks the officer.
Now wait,
the officer continues.
Are you saying your owners were drinking and texting before they wrecked?
The monkey nods his head up and down. The officer asks,
What were you doing during all this?
The monkey holds his arms up and motions. Driving. 2 men from a small town in Ireland were looking at a mail order catalog and admiring the pictures of the models. Patrick said to Shane,
Have you seen the gorgeous women in this catalogue?
Shane replied,
Yes, I have, and aren't they all gorgeous too? And have you seen the price?
Patrick exclaimed with wide eyes.
Will you look at that? They aren't at all expensive. At this price, I'm buying.
Shane smiled and patted Patrick on the back.
Good idea, Patrick. You order one, and if she's as gorgeous as she's in the catalogue, I'll get one too.
3 weeks later, Shane asks his friend,
Did you ever receive that girl you ordered from the catalogue?
Patrick replied,
No, I didn't, but it shouldn't be long now. She sent all her clothes yesterday.
A young boy enters a barber shop. The barber whispers to his customer,
This is the dumbest kid in the world. Watch this.
The barber puts a dollar bill in one hand and 2 quarters in the other, then calls the boy over and asks,
Which one do you want, son?
The boy takes the quarters and leaves.
What did I tell you?
Said the barber.
That kid never learns.
Later, when the customer leaves, he sees the same young boy coming out of the ice cream store. Hey, son, may I ask you a question? Asked the man. Why did you take the quarters instead of the dollar bill? The boy took another lick of his cone, then replied,
Because if I take the dollar, the game is over.
Dave has just finished up work for the evening and is walking to his car. Suddenly, a short, rather squat-looking man appears in front of him with a gun in his hand.
Give me everything you've got.
The man screeches at Dave. So Dave hands over his money and his wallet. As the man is about to leave, Dave stops him. Say, he says to the robber, holding out his hat, would you shoot a few bullets in my hat? I don't want my wife to think I spent all my money on booze and gambling. The robber also has a wife, so he agrees and shoots a few holes in Dave's hat. Taking off his coat, Dave then says, Thanks, buddy. How about a few bullets in my coat while you're at it? I want to look like I put up a fight and I was not a coward. The robber sighs and shoots a few holes into Dave's coat. Then Dave says, Just one more thing. Can you please shoot?
Look, mister, I ain't got no more bullets.
Says the robber. Oh, says Dave, then would you please give me everything you've got before I beat the out of you? An old lady is just about to turn 100 years old. She is in great health for her age and regularly walks to the market, post office, and the bank without issue. Since she is living in a small town, her 100th birthday is a big deal for the locals. On her birthday, she is visited by the mayor, who presents her with a badge honoring her as the oldest person in town. There is also a local TV station doing a report for the evening news about her. The reporter asks her, What is your secret for a long and healthy life?
It's simple.
She replies,
Never have I in my entire life argued with another person.
Shocked, the reporter says, That's impossible. The old lady replies,
You know, Sonny, you're right.
Cinderella was now 75 years old. After a fulfilling life with the now passed away prince, she sat happily upon her rocking chair, watching the world go by from her front porch with a cat named Alan for companionship. One sunny afternoon, out of nowhere, appeared the fairy godmother. Cinderella said,
Fairy godmother, what are you doing here after all these years?
The fairy godmother replied,
Well, Cinderella, as you have lived a good and wholesome life since we last met, I have decided to grant you 3 wishes. Is there anything for which your heart still yearns?
Cinderella was overjoyed, and after some thoughtful consideration, almost under her breath, she uttered her first wish.
I wish I was wealthy beyond comprehension.
Instantly, her rocking chair was turned into solid gold. Cinderella was stunned. Alan, her old faithful cat, jumped off her lap and scampered to the edge of the porch, quivering with fear. Cinderella said,
Oh, thank you, fairy godmother.
The fairy godmother replied,
It's the least I can do. What does your heart desire for your second wish?
Cinderella looked down at her frail body and said,
I wish I were young and full of the beauty of youth again.
At once, her wish became reality, and her beautiful, youthful visage returned. Cinderella felt stirrings inside her that had been dormant for years, and long-forgotten vigor and vitality began to course through her very soul. Then the fairy godmother again spoke.
You have one more wish. What will you have?
Cinderella looked over to the frightened cat in the corner and said,
I wish you to transform Alan, my old cat, into a beautiful and handsome young man.
Magically, Alan suddenly underwent a fundamental change in his biological makeup. That, when complete, he stood before her, a boy so beautiful, the likes of which neither she nor the world had ever seen. The fairy godmother again spoke.
Congratulations, Cinderella. Enjoy your new life.
And with a blazing shock of bright blue electricity, she was gone. For a few eerie moments, Alan and Cinderella looked into each other's eyes. Cinderella sat breathless, gazing at the most stunningly perfect boy she had ever seen. Then, Alan walked over to Cinderella, who sat transfixed in a rocking chair, and held her close in his strong, youthful arms. He leaned in close to her ear, whispered, blowing her golden hair with his warm breath. I bet you regret having me neutered now, don't you? Bubba died in a fire, and his body was burned badly. The morgue needed someone to identify the body, so they sent for his two best friends, Daryl and Gomer. The three men had always done everything together. Daryl arrived first, and when the mortician pulled back the sheet, Daryl said,
Yep, his face is burned up pretty bad. You better roll him over.
The mortician rolled him over, and Daryl said,
Nope, that ain't Bubba.
The mortician thought that was rather strange. Then he brought Gomer in to identify the body. Gomer looked at the body and said,
Yep, he's pretty well burnt up. Roll him over.
The mortician rolled him over and Gomer said,
Nope, it ain't Bubba.
The mortician asked, How can you tell? Gomer said,
Well, Bubba had two a-holes.
What? Asked the mortician.
Yep, everyone knew he had two a-holes,
said Gomer.
Every time we went to town, folks would say, Here comes Bubba with them two a-holes.
Three men are sitting at a bar having a beer. They're discussing what they want their family and friends to say when the time comes and they're laying in their caskets. The first man says,
I want them to say I was a great father and a great friend. And I want them to say I was dependable.
The second guy says,
I just want them to talk about how much I helped change the world. And how I left it a better place for others.
The third guy just sips his beer. One of the other men asks,
Hey, what about you? What do you want your family and friends to say about you?
The third guy thinks for a moment while taking another swig of his beer. Then he says, I guess I'd like them to look at me and say, Look, he's still breathing. Three friends, a rabbi, a Hindu holy man, and a lawyer, had car trouble in the countryside and asked to spend the night with a farmer. The farmer said,
Yeah, there might be a problem. You see, I only have room for two to sleep, so one of you must sleep in the barn.
No problem,
chimed the rabbi.
My people wandered in the desert for 40 years. I am humble enough to sleep in the barn for an evening in their memory.
With that, he departed to the barn, and the others bedded down for the night. Moments later, a knock was heard at the door. The farmer opened the door. There stood the rabbi from the barn.
Well, what's wrong?
Asked the farmer. He replied,
I am grateful to you, good sir, but I cannot sleep in the barn. There is a pig in the barn, and my faith believes that this is an unclean animal.
His Hindu friend agreed to swap places with him. But a few minutes later, the same scene reoccurred. There was a knock on the door.
What's wrong now?
The farmer asked. The Hindu holy man replied,
I too am grateful for you helping us out. But there is a cow in the barn, and in my country, cows are considered sacred. I can't sleep on holy ground.
Well, that left only the lawyer to make the change. He grumbled and complained, but went out to the barn. Moments later, there was another knock on the farmer's door. Frustrated and tired, the farmer opened the door, and there stood the pig and the cow.